Effective immediately, David, your nomination for the Starlight Awards will be transferred to George. Mary didn't even blink. She said it like it was a line from a quarterly report, not the death sentence it was. For a second, the words didn't register. The boardroom fell silent. David sat there, still gripping the sleek folder containing the pitch materials, his pitch materials, for the biggest advertising award in the industry. "Excuse me?" His voice came out quieter than he expected. Mary folded her hands on the table, her expression unreadable. "George will be presenting the final campaign. The board feels his creative vision better aligns with the new direction we're taking." George. The intern. The kid who still confused a mood board with a menu. David's eyes shifted to him, early 20s, perfectly styled hair, innocent puppy dog eyes that darted nervously to the floor. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the seat. David turned back to Mary. "You're joking." Her tone sharpened. "Do I look like I'm joking, David?" A slow burn began in his chest. 3 months. He hadn't seen daylight in 3 months. The campaign was his brainchild, every line, every frame, every pitch rehearsed until his voice cracked. And now it was being handed over to someone who hadn't even earned a parking pass. He tried to laugh, but nothing came out. "What, did he make you a playlist of your old high school songs? Whisper some crap about fate and destiny?" "Enough," Mary said coldly. "You're out of line." The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. No one spoke. No one moved. He leaned forward, voice low. "You do realize what you're doing. This isn't just a pitch. This is our shot at international clients. This is the industry event. And you're going to hand the presentation to someone who couldn't format a case study?" Mary met his eyes. Her voice was like frost. "Your attitude has been increasingly volatile. You've been making decisions without alignment. You're brilliant, David. But brilliance without collaboration is a liability. And frankly, team morale has plummeted." He laughed out loud this time. "So this is about morale now? Since when has this company given a damn about morale when we were winning?" "We're done here," Mary said, standing. "You're to take a mandatory leave of absence starting today. An associate director will take over your responsibilities in the meantime. I hope you'll use the time to reflect." The finality in her tone hit like a hammer. David looked around the table, one last time, as if someone might speak up. Someone might say, "Wait, this is a mistake." No one did. Not even George, who looked like he wanted to disappear. David stood slowly. The air felt heavy, hot. He looked Mary in the eyes and said, "You're right. I should reflect." He paused. "Maybe on why I ever thought this company deserved me." He walked out. Not fast. Not in rage. With precision. He passed the creative floor. The designers looked up, confused. The junior strategists paused mid-coffee. He didn't stop. He entered his office. Closed the door. Silence. The hum of the city through the windows. The photo of last year's team celebration still on his shelf. He stood in front of his desk. The hand that had led 100 presentations, shaking. Just barely. He reached for a cardboard box tucked behind the credenza. Started placing things inside. A notebook. A framed photo. A coffee mug with fading text, "Build, then burn." His hands were steady now. David Hayes didn't believe in fate. He believed in frameworks, brand systems, messaging matrices, anything that could be broken down, mapped out, and perfected. At 33, he was the youngest creative director in the city with 2 national campaigns under his belt and a reputation for delivering miracles under pressure. He had joined Lumage Agency 3 years ago when it was nothing more than a crumbling boutique firm bleeding talent and struggling to land medium-tier clients. Back then, no one would have touched it. Except for her. Mary Langford. She had just inherited the skeleton of the company after her father's sudden death. The business world expected her to fold, sell, or marry out of it. She did none of those things. Instead, she hired David. Their first meeting had been short. A conference room, 2 resumes on the table, and her staring at him with that unreadable expression she wore like armor. "You don't play nice," she had said. "I play to win," he'd replied. She smiled, then. Slight. Calculated. Almost like she was giving permission. Good. From that moment on, they built an empire side by side. David was the weapon. Mary was the shield. He bled creativity. She defended it with cold, precise pitches. When clients doubted, Mary stepped in. When teams faltered, David showed up at 3 a.m. with coffee and rewrites. They never crossed the line. Not once. But David knew the truth. He had loved her from the first strategy offsite. The night she'd stood in the snow outside a failed pitch meeting, her arms crossed, chin high, refusing to let the senior partners see how much it had hurt. She never cried. Never cracked. But later that night, she had shown up at his apartment with a bottle of bourbon and said, "Tell me where I went wrong." They'd sat on the floor until sunrise, building the next pitch together. He knew then, she was the mountain, and he'd gladly carry the climb. 3 years later, Lumiage had landed international clients. Their name was etched into the shortlist for the Starlight Awards. They'd taken the company global. And all of it, every inch of it, was built on the unspoken trust between them. Or so he thought. George appeared 6 weeks ago. He was introduced at an all-hands meeting as the new intern, part of our future leadership pipeline. Early 20s, clean-cut, soft-spoken, always hovering quietly behind Mary like a shadow. David had tried to train him. He always gave new hires a fair shot. But it became clear quickly, George didn't understand a thing. He misfiled pitch decks, referred to clients by the wrong names, and once accidentally sent the internal brand guidelines to a competitor. Yet Mary never reprimanded him. Not once. In fact, she laughed off his mistakes. Took meetings with him personally. When David questioned the logic, Mary's answer was cool. "He reminds me of someone I used to know." David began to notice the glances. The way she'd stand slightly in front of George in tense meetings. The way her voice softened when she addressed him. He started putting pieces together. One night, working late, George had left his badge on the design table. David picked it up to return it and noticed the emergency contact info printed on the back. Langford, personal. Langford. Mary's name. But not listed as a cousin, or sibling, or employer. Just, personal. That same night, David passed by her office. Her phone was on her desk, unlocked. A photo was glowing on the lock screen. It was a teenage boy, sunlight behind him, in a white school uniform. Smiling like the world still made sense. He looked just like George. And suddenly it clicked. Not a nephew. Not a recruit. The one that got away. The one she'd never let go of. David remembered a conversation from over a year ago. They were walking out of a conference in D.C., both half-drunk, buzzing from a pitch gone perfectly. She had said, out of nowhere, "Do you think people can change if the person they lost suddenly walks back into their life?" He thought it was about business. About her father. Now, he knew. It had always been about George. And now George wasn't just in her life. He was taking David's place. The pitch. The team. The chair at the boardroom table. David had never made a move on Mary. Never confessed how he felt. He thought his loyalty was loud enough. But clearly, it wasn't. It hadn't mattered. Because in her heart, she'd always been waiting for someone else. And now that person had returned. At first, the heartbreak hadn't registered. It showed up in small cracks, David forgetting meetings, rewriting drafts that didn't need revision, staying silent in strategy sessions. His team noticed. Alex, his right-hand strategist, had pulled him aside. "Are you good, man? You don't seem like you." David shrugged it off. "Just tired." But inside, something was already rotting. Because while George fumbled his way through client briefs and charm offensives, Mary watched him like he held the last piece of her puzzle. And David, who had carried her company, her vision, her silence for 3 straight years, was now nothing more than a supporting character in her redemption arc. The shame came next. The meetings she stopped inviting him to. The way she downplayed his input in front of the board. And when George started showing up to late-night creative reviews that used to be just her and David, David knew exactly what was happening. One night, the two of them came out of the office elevator together. She was laughing at something George had said. She hadn't laughed like that with David in over a year. The final insult came the following morning, during the prep session for the Starlight presentation. David walked into the war room and found George's name on the first slide. Lead creative, George Langford. He stared at it. Blinked. Mary was behind him. "It's a temporary change," she said, flatly. "You've been overextended. Let someone else shine for once." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a goodbye. That afternoon, David went home early. He didn't cry. He stared at the city lights for hours, his phone buzzing every few minutes with texts from his team. He ignored all of them. Then, finally, he opened a secure inbox. A dormant thread waited for him, unread for months. Sender, Sarah Vance. Subject, standing offer, still open? The atmosphere in the glass-walled boardroom was unusually tense, but David had grown used to that lately. He adjusted the cuff of his black shirt and waited for Mary to begin the weekly review. To his left sat Alex and the rest of his core team, copywriters, strategists, visual leads, faces sharp with anticipation. The final rehearsals for the Starlight Awards campaign were due to start today. David had been refining the deck all week. Mary entered last, as always. Flawless in her gray silk blazer, heels soft against the marble floor, a tablet in hand and George trailing just behind her like a perfectly timed shadow. "Let's begin," she said. "As you've all heard, there will be a slight change in the lineup for the Starlight presentation." David didn't blink. He assumed she was going to mention minor format tweaks. Mary glanced briefly in his direction, then back to the team. "George Langford will be presenting the campaign on behalf of the agency." Silence. David sat forward, slowly. "Excuse me?" Mary's voice remained perfectly composed. "We've decided George will lead the pitch in Berlin. He'll deliver the creative, client walkthrough, and handle Q&A. He's been closely studying the material. I trust he's ready." The room didn't breathe. David laughed under his breath. "You trust he's ready? He couldn't answer a single question in our last mock session. He doesn't even understand the funnel hierarchy." "David," she said, her tone low but sharp, "this isn't the time to question the decision." "Then when is, Mary?" he snapped, rising slightly from his seat. "You're replacing the architect of this campaign with a kid who couldn't hold eye contact during the strategy sprint. This isn't delegation, it's sabotage." "Careful," she warned. "This attitude is exactly the problem." He blinked. "The problem? You've become increasingly combative. You've been rejecting revisions without review, shutting down junior input, and acting unilaterally. We've received multiple complaints from the creative floor." His voice dropped. "From who?" Her expression didn't flinch. "That's not the point." David looked around the room. The team stared at their laptops or the table, no one meeting his gaze. Alex looked like he wanted to speak but bit his tongue. "So that's it?" David asked. "You push me out of my own work and hand it over to someone who doesn't belong in the room?" Mary didn't respond. She turned to the HR rep seated at the back. "Effective today, David will be placed on temporary leave. We'll call it a creative reset." You're still on payroll, of course. We suggest you take some time away and reflect. David stared at her, cold. You think I'm going to disappear quietly? Her voice was like ice. I think you've already overstayed your welcome. He turned to the team, jaw tight. You all know I built this campaign from the ground up. This isn't about morale. This isn't about collaboration. This is personal. No one answered. Mary's hand gestured toward the door. We're done here. David walked out without a word. Back at his office, the creative floor buzzed in whispers. A few younger employees stood frozen by the coffee machine. As he passed, they looked away, ashamed. Inside, Alex followed him in. This is messed up, he said under his breath. Everyone's in shock. David didn't respond. You want me to talk to the partners? David shook his head. It's no use. She's made up her mind. This was planned. You think George had something to do with it? I think George is the reason. Alex exhaled. Then we're all screwed. David didn't answer. After Alex left, David shut the blinds, dimmed the lights, and sat at his desk. The city outside sparkled with blind indifference. He had thought loyalty meant something. He had thought 3 years of dedication, of sleepless nights and pitch winds and blood on the white bards, counted for something. But all it had taken was one pretty face and a whisper of the past for Mary to throw it all away. He stared at the blinking cursor on his desktop for a long time. Then he opened a folder buried under layers of encryption. One unread email sat at the top. From Sarah Vance. Subject, Apex Capital, divestment draft. David. Just say the word. The paperwork's ready. SV. His hands didn't tremble. He clicked reply. Typed 2 words. Do it. David didn't turn on the lights when he got home. He left the office in silence, rode the elevator down without a word, ignored the stares and hushed voices from the interns on the ground floor, and walked straight into the city's cold evening air with nothing but his laptop bag and the bitter taste of betrayal on his tongue. He didn't even remember the ride back to his apartment. Now, alone, with the glow of skyscrapers bleeding through the blinds, he sat on the couch in the dark, a single glass of bourbon in his hand. No music. No television. Just stillness. He hadn't spoken since the moment Mary said, "You've overstayed your welcome." The phrase echoed in his skull like a gunshot. For 3 years, he had bled for her company. For her. He'd been there when the first major client pulled out, and Mary nearly broke. He'd stayed up for 72 straight hours with a fever to salvage the campaign that saved their reputation. He remembered the late nights at her place, when she couldn't sleep, when her hands trembled over financials and her voice barely held together. He was the one who stood beside her when no one else believed she could run a company. He believed. He made others believe. And now? Now she handed it all over to a fresh-faced imposter and told David to reflect. He took a long drink. The liquor burned less than her voice. On his coffee table, his phone buzzed. Again. Unanswered messages filled the screen. Alex. His team. Even a few board members who weren't in the room. He ignored them all. The messages kept coming. Until one name appeared. Mary. He let it ring. Then it buzzed again. A voicemail. Then another call. Then a text. David. I didn't expect it to go like this. Please, just call me. Let's talk. He stared at the screen. Buzz. Another message. I know you're angry. I know it was sudden. But we can fix this. Come in tomorrow. We'll talk to HR together. Buzz. Please don't make this worse than it has to be. He turned the phone face down. But he couldn't stop the flood. His mind betrayed him with memories. Mary laughing beside him during the overnight brainstorm at the lake house. The first time she called him partner in front of a client. The quiet way she said thank you after he pulled off the emergency pitch that saved their biggest account. Her eyes. Cold now. But once warm. Once proud. He downed the rest of the bourbon. Then poured another. Somewhere past midnight, he opened his laptop and refreshed the financial reports. News of the Apex Capital pullout had gone public an hour ago. LoomEdge stock graph was already nosediving. Investors were panicking. A client in London issued a formal statement that it was re-evaluating the agency's stability. He watched the numbers fall in silence. His heart didn't race. His jaw didn't clench. There was nothing left to clench. He stared out at the skyline. Mary must have seen the news too. As if summoned, his phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Then another. Then the messages started. Desperation leaked from every line. David. Did you have anything to do with this? David, please, the board is demanding answers. David, you need to fix this. David. Please. Just talk to them. It's not too late. He read every word. Calmly. And finally, after the 12th message, he opened a new email. To Mary Langford. Subject, urgent, please call. Body. I'd rather not. My actions are detrimental to team morale. Remember? He hit send. Then blocked her number. The next morning, LoomEdge's value dropped another 14% by noon. Industry blogs were already calling it the Apex withdrawal crisis. Rumors swirled about infighting. About instability. David's name wasn't in any of the stories. But he knew she knew. She'd always been smart enough to connect the dots. But not smart enough to value the man who made those dots matter. By evening, Mary's final message came. David, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this to you. I thought. I don't know what I thought. I just need you to come back. I'll undo everything. Just tell Apex it was a misunderstanding. Please. He read it once. Then closed his laptop. And went to sleep. For the first time in weeks, he slept through the night. No dreams. No nightmares. Just stillness. The David who loved Mary Langford had gone quiet. And the one who replaced him? He was just getting started. It was nearly noon when Alex called. David almost didn't answer, his phone had stayed on silent for the last 24 hours, but something about the name flashing on the screen made him pause. Yeah? You need to check your inbox. Right now, Alex said, breathless. There's a message, it's from Apex. Well, technically from her. Sarah Vance. David sat up. I don't understand what's happening, Alex continued. All I know is it was sent to your personal account. Not your LoomEdge one. It bypassed everything. David didn't speak. He had no intention of confirming that Apex Capital's funding withdrawal was his orchestration. Not yet. He opened his encrypted inbox. The subject line was simple. Lunch? SV. The body was even shorter. Ethan? One of my people is downstairs. I'd like a word. Sarah. Attached was a cafe reservation and a photo of a woman in a black blazer standing next to a matte black Escalade. 5 minutes later, David was stepping into the back seat. Sarah Vance didn't look like a CEO. Not at first glance. She didn't have Mary's cold beauty or rigid perfection. She wore her confidence like silk, effortless and smooth, with a natural polish that couldn't be bought or taught. Her hair was dark, long, loosely curled, framing a face that was as composed as it was curious. She was maybe in her late 30s, but there was something timeless in her presence. She smiled as David entered. So, this is the dragon I've heard about. David raised an eyebrow. You call that a greeting? I call it recognition. Her voice was warm, but it carried the unmistakable cadence of power. I've been watching you, David. Since your first campaign 2 years ago. I knew it was only a matter of time before Lumage couldn't hold you. He narrowed his eyes. So you heard about the fallout. I orchestrated the fallout, she replied calmly, then smirked at his expression. I didn't cause it, but I gave you the match. You just had to light it. He exhaled. And now? Now, I want to offer you something. She folded her hands. Genesis Interactive. A new division under Apex Global. Advertising, creative media, brand IPs, built around you. David blinked. You're offering me a company. I'm offering you a legacy. She leaned in slightly. Mary Langford made the same mistake all power-drunk founders do. She thought her beauty and last name were enough to protect her. She underestimated the man who made her look brilliant. Why me? David asked, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. Sarah's eyes glinted. Because someone needs to show her she was never the queen. Only the stepping stone. Silence filled the car. David leaned back, watching the city slide past the tinted windows. You think I'll say yes just to get back at her? Sarah laughed lightly. You'll say yes because you were always meant for more. The revenge is just a bonus. David stared out the window. The skyline looked different now. Not like a city. Like a game board. What's the budget? Unlimited. And control? Yours. He paused. Then turned his head and met her eyes. I'll need a new team. Take whoever you want from the Apex ecosystem. He smiled faintly. I wasn't talking about Apex. She smiled back. Ah. You want to raid the remains of Lumage? They're not remains yet, he said softly. But they will be. David extended his hand. Sarah took it. Welcome to Genesis, Mr. Hayes, she said. Now let's build an empire. By sunset, the paperwork was done. Genesis Interactive was born. Apex Global's legal team had prepared everything in advance, bank accounts, trademarks, floor plans, the top floor of the Apex Tower already cleared out and redesigned to his specs. The next morning, his keycard was ready. David's first call was to Alex. Tell everyone I trust to meet me. New place. New war. The call went silent for a second. Then, we're all in. Within 24 hours, he'd reclaimed his entire core team, strategists, copy leads, even back-end coders. Mary didn't see it coming. The moment they walked into the Genesis office, jaws dropped. The space was sleek, built in grayscale steel and glass, overlooking the skyline Mary once ruled. Alex whispered, "This is next level." David turned to the team. "This is the battlefield. And we're not here to play fair. We're here to bury Lumage." A murmur of approval turned to a thunderous cheer. And just like that, Mary's world began to crack. George stood frozen in front of the judges at the Starlight Awards preliminary round, the remote in his hand trembling. Slide 6 sat on the massive LED screen behind him, misaligned, half-cropped, the main headline misspelled. From the front row, one of the judges raised an eyebrow. Can you walk us through the value proposition here? George blinked. Sure. He laughed awkwardly. This slide, was actually prepared by the team. I mean, I know what it means, but I didn't, write it personally. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Another judge leaned forward. What exactly was your role in the concept phase? George stammered, flipping frantically through note cards. I was involved in ideation? Emotionally? The lead judge sighed. Thank you. We've heard enough. And just like that, Lumage was eliminated. The campaign David had built, his blood, his brain, his legacy, was thrown into the trash by a boy who didn't know how to pronounce consumer segmentation. Mary's face, according to witnesses, had drained of all color. When they returned to the office that night, she screamed at George in the middle of the hallway. I told you to learn the deck. You told me to be you, he'd cried, his voice cracking. I never asked for this. I was just trying to make you happy. You embarrassed me in front of the entire industry. George looked like he wanted to crawl inside his skin. I didn't write any of that. You said I could do it, that I was ready. Because I loved you, she snapped. And just like that, it was out in the open. Employees scattered. George stormed out. The next day, Lumage lost 2 major accounts. The following day, a third. Then the bank called. The company Mary had inherited, once full of light, pride, legacy, was collapsing. And finally, at 11:47 p.m., David's apartment buzzer rang. He didn't check the screen. He already knew. When he opened the door, Mary stood there in the hallway, drenched in rain, her lipstick smudged, her eyes swollen red. He stepped aside without a word. Inside, she stood silently for a moment before whispering, "You were right." He poured himself a glass of bourbon. Didn't offer her one. I lost everything. Her voice cracked. Everyone's gone. The board wants me out. Clients are fleeing. I begged Kevin from Apex, he won't take my calls. David stared at her with hollow eyes. That's unfortunate. She looked at him then, truly looked. You did this, didn't you? He didn't blink. You handed me the match, Mary. All I did was strike it. I was wrong, she whispered. I should have never replaced you. You were the heart of the company. I see that now. Please. I'm begging you. Her voice broke. Help me. Just, help me fix this. I'll give you back your position, your team, your shares, anything. David studied her. The last time he had looked at her like this, he had loved her. That man was dead. He walked over slowly, standing just inches from her. Anything? She swallowed. Yes. He leaned down, his voice barely above a whisper. Sleep with me. Her eyes widened. What? You said anything. Her lip trembled. You're not serious. David's eyes didn't move. You used me for 3 years, Mary. You discarded me like a broken tool. Now I want you to understand what that feels like. She looked down, horrified. David. No boardroom. No camera. No contract. Just this. You. Me. And the one thing you never gave me when I was loyal. Her body shook. Her breath hitched. Tears fell silently. And then, slowly, she nodded. That night, they didn't speak. She didn't look at him once. And when it was over, she curled into a corner of the bed and sobbed so quietly it barely registered a sound. David didn't touch her. Didn't comfort her. He just stared at the ceiling. At dawn, he rose, dressed, and brewed coffee in the kitchen. Mary emerged, wearing the wrinkled blazer from the night before. Her eyes were hollow. Her voice rasped. You promised. You said, if I. David turned to her, holding his mug. I considered it. A pause. The answer is no. She blinked, stunned. What? He walked past her, opened the door to the hallway, and gestured casually. You can go now. Her voice cracked. You used me. No, he said, calmly. You offered yourself. Just like a common whore. She flinched like she'd been slapped. Her knees buckled. She collapsed to the floor, shaking violently, tears streaming down her face. I loved you, she whispered. I was stupid, but I loved you. David didn't respond. He pulled out his phone and dialed security. There's a woman in my suite. She's not supposed to be here. Mary's voice shrieked from behind him as he walked away. You bastard. You cold, heartless bastard. Security arrived within minutes. They tried to help her up, but she fought them, screaming, clawing, breaking down in front of the entire floor. When they finally dragged her past the main lobby, Sarah was just stepping off the elevator with 2 coffees. She stopped, looked at the scene, then at David. Mary locked eyes with her as she passed. "You think you've won? You're just a vulture feeding on what's left of him." Sarah didn't blink. She waited until the guards disappeared with the wreckage of the woman David once loved. Then she handed him a coffee. "Revenge is sweet, isn't it?" she said softly. David stared at the cup. Then at her. It was. But it wasn't finished. The acquisition moved fast. Lumage was in freefall, its accounts drained, board fractured, liabilities mounting like a sinking ship taking on water. By the time Genesis Interactive made its move, the offer was an insult. And the board had no choice but to take it. David walked into the boardroom flanked by Apex attorneys and Sarah, who stood just behind him in a tailored charcoal blazer, her presence like a calm storm waiting to be unleashed. Mary was already seated at the long oak table, frail in a shapeless black dress, her face pale, her eyes glassy. She didn't rise when he entered. She didn't speak. A folder sat in front of her, trembling under her fingertips. The papers inside would transfer every asset, every patent, every client, every last branded remnant of her father's company, to him. David sat at the head of the table. He opened the folder, took a pen from his pocket, and signed his name with quiet precision. Mary signed after him. Her hand shook. When it was over, she looked at him, not angry, not wounded. Just empty. "You win," she whispered. David closed the folder. "This was never a game, Mary," he said softly. "Just cause and effect." She didn't reply. She stood and walked out without looking back. That was the last time most of the industry ever saw her. 2 weeks later, Genesis Interactive formally dissolved the Lumage brand. David stood in the newly christened executive floor and watched as technicians removed the last traces of the old logo from the wall. He didn't flinch. He turned to Sarah. "Strip it all. Every trace. New name. New era." She smiled. Already underway. The rollout was aggressive. Every campaign rebranded. Every media mention redirected. David made sure the history of Lumage became a footnote buried in the shadow of Genesis. And yet, with every meeting, every pitch, every expansion, he found something strange stirring in him: peace. It came in the little things. The way Sarah brought him coffee just the way he liked it, without ever asking. The way she'd argue with him in strategy meetings and still take his hand under the table when they agreed. She didn't worship him. She didn't need him to be broken. She saw him exactly as he was, and still chose him. One night, they stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of their shared office, city lights glowing beneath them. Sarah leaned her head against his shoulder. "We did it," she murmured. "No," David replied, his voice quiet. "You did it. You pulled me out of hell." She turned her face up to his. "You were never in hell. You were just waiting for the right hand to pull you forward." He kissed her without a word. 3 months later, Mary returned. It was unannounced. Security buzzed his office, uncertain. "There's someone downstairs. She says her name is Mary Langford. She has something for you." David hesitated. Then, "Send her up." She looked different. Thinner. Older. No makeup. Dressed in jeans and a worn jacket. She didn't sit. She placed a small USB drive on his desk. "What is it?" She didn't meet his eyes. "Just watch it." He plugged it in. A single video file. George, in what looked like a dingy internet cafe, speaking straight to a webcam. "Can't believe she bought all that. I told her I was her childhood crush, some fantasy crap. Used a few old photos, some stories she told in interviews. Hooked her like a fish. Stupid rich girl with a savior complex." Got into the company, faked my credentials, stole some campaigns from portfolios I found online. Idiot didn't even notice. David, whatever his name was? That guy was the real genius. Poor bastard got played harder than she did. David sat still. The file ended. Mary's voice broke the silence. I didn't know. I swear to you. I truly thought he was. You thought he was your second chance, David finished. She nodded, eyes wet. And I destroyed the one person who ever really stood beside me. She stepped back. I'm not here for forgiveness. Just the truth. You didn't deserve what I did to you. Not even close. He opened his wallet. Took out a platinum card. There's $500,000 on this. Use it to start over. She looked at it, stunned. Why would you? It's not for you, David said. It's for closure. After this, we're even. Mary stood there, unmoving. Then she shook her head. I don't want your money. She turned. Walked to the door. At the threshold, she paused. Sarah's a good woman. Don't ruin it by holding on to ghosts. She left without looking back. That night, David stood on the balcony with Sarah, a blanket over both their shoulders, the city glowing below them. She leaned into him, her voice soft. Do you still think about her? He didn't lie. I used to. And now? He turned to her. Now I only think about you. She smiled, tired but warm. Then whispered, almost shyly, let's get married. His heart stopped. Then surged. He cupped her face in his hands, kissed her forehead gently. Okay, he whispered back. Let's get married. The moonlight bathed them in soft silver. No pain. No ghosts. No war left to fight. Just two people. Equal. Present. Alive.